Hey, it's Amy. Welcome back to my cave. As has been the pattern for the past few videos, I am filming this real quick, hopefully, and then returning straight back to work. I was supposed to take today off, but of course, because I'm a procrastinator, I have to get some things done before the week is up. I don't think I'm the only person doing that this time. All of us have clocked many hours this week because my department has been moving out of our offices. We're permanently working from home from now on, which is great, but of course, moving is always a pain in the ass, even if you don't have a lot of stuff. Like me, I don't really have much. In fact, the majority of my office possessions consist of Funko Pops and random stuff I had displayed on my shelves. So you can see behind me the windowsill before. I used to put my vacuum filter that I washed there, but now it has been occupied by my Funko Pops instead because I don't have another shelf. All I have is this thing behind me. And I might have to construct a new shelf soon just so I can display my Funko Pops and like a few other knickknacks that I had that I got from conventions and book festivals and stuff. Anyways, today I have a post-it note with me because I want to make sure I cover all these points that I wanted to cover regarding this book. And the book that I'm talking about is The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. And I'm sure many of you have seen the cover by now, been recommended it, just seen it floating around the internet somewhere. I normally don't like looking at reviews of books that I've read before I film my own reviews, but in this case I was curious because I gave the book 5 stars on Goodreads. The average rating on there I think is like 3.8 something, and I wanted to go through and see why these people are wrong. Just kidding. Opinions different from my own still have to be valued and taken into consideration, I suppose. Anyways, I scrolled through and looked at them and I went, okay, I think I understand why these people didn't like this book. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they were sold something different and what they got was not what they expected, so therefore they were disappointed. And I was actually in the same boat. I thought this book was going to be from the point of view of this clone character, and instead it ended up being from the point of view of Evelyn Caldwell, who is the scientist that came up with this cloning technology. Wait a minute, let me backtrack a little. I didn't even tell you the context for all of this. So basically the protagonist, like I said, is Evelyn Caldwell. She is this brilliant scientist. She heads up a department, runs her own lab, which if you work in academia, specifically in STEM, you know how hard it is to get the funding for that. Funding and clout. And she has gotten it all through hard work and many sacrifices. And the work that she specializes in revolves around cloning technology. These are very complex clones. Like she grows them in her lab and they start out as little blobs and then they increase into the size of a human. They start taking a human shape. They grow to resemble the original that they were cloned from, except they are a perfect version of that person. For example, if I were to be cloned by Evelyn Caldwell, I would emerge from her lab as the perfect version of myself, like unmarked, no blemishes, no scars or anything. But because I'm a human and we are not perfect, I have certain scars and marks that make me who I am. I have a scar on my arm from when I was being a dumbass a couple of years ago and stuck my arm too far into the oven and got scorched by the oven rack. So in order for these clones to be convincing, Evelyn and her team have to essentially injure the clones and then heal those injuries so that they are exactly like the person that is being cloned. So if it were my clone, she would have to scorch my arm in the exact same area that my real self was scorched and then heal it so that the clone would have the exact same scar. If somebody broke their arm, she would have to break the clone's arm and then heal it so the clone would have the same fractures inside, like if you do an x-ray or something. And she's also come up with this mind mapping technology that allows you to copy the brain memories and personality of the original. You can make edits if you want, but of course we're trying to make an exact clone. So she has figured out a way to copy the mind map of the original over to this clone. The only thing is that the clones they can't really live long. They're not meant to have long shelf lives. They're supposed to be used for, let's say you're a politician and you want a body double so that that body double can be shot or targeted instead of you would request a clone from Evelyn, something like that. There's huge ethical issues around cloning people just to live as people. Clones have to be made for specific purposes and they aren't meant to last. In the beginning of the book, Evelyn is being honored at this event at her workplace, basically like the crowning achievement of her career in her life. What she has worked so hard and made so many sacrifices for. It all was supposed to lead to this big moment, but of course it's been marred by all these circumstances that are going on in her home life. Evelyn has discovered that her husband Nathan, who is also a scientist and used to work with her in the lab back when they were younger. I think that's like they met because they ran in the same work and social circles. But she has discovered that he is having an affair, and it's not just like, one night stand, having tryst with people. Like it's a full-blown affair with a mistress and a second house and everything. So she goes to the second house to confront him, and there she meets herself. And of course, you could guess it's because Nathan has made a clone of her. And all the reviews mention that, like, Nathan has made a clone of her and he's having an affair with this clone, but they don't really explain why this is a big deal. I said earlier that the mind mapping technology that Evelyn invented can be used to edit like a clone's personality and traits, but it's not supposed to be used that way because, you know, ethical issues. Like, why would you want to edit a clone's personality if you are just going to use it for like one specific job? But she finds out that not only has Nathan made this clone of her and named her Martine and given her her own identity and life, essentially, he has also made her to be basically a more docile version of Evelyn. So it's Evelyn with her intelligence, but without her coldness and her harshness and her prioritization of her career over everything else. So this Martine looks like Evelyn, can think like Evelyn, but doesn't think like Evelyn because she has essentially a different personality. He made her so that she wants to be the perfect housewife. Like, she wants to be a mother. She wants to basically be there for Nathan as the perfect Stepford wife, pretty much. But she's also smart like Evelyn, so if Nathan wants to bounce ideas off of her, if he wants her to help him with his research, she can do that. He basically uses her to further his own work, but she won't take away from any of his glory by being better than him, because let's face it, Evelyn is more brilliant than Nathan, and she repeats that many, many times throughout the book. It's one of the things that I think makes Evelyn unlikable. Like, she's very aware of how smart she is and how good she is at what she does, and she belittles and puts down the people around her because she knows that they aren't as smart as she is, and she gets very frustrated by that, and she sees her husband as beneath her. My mom, being like a housewife out of the 60s, always tells me, you know, if you are too intelligent, your husband will feel threatened. And I'm like, well, what bullshit? Then he can go feel threatened on his own. We are not going to stay together if, you know, my intelligence threatens him. I think she thinks that I'm going to be like Evelyn, like I'm going to go, ugh, I wish my husband were actually smarter. I wish he wasn't so stupid and keeps cutting corners. Like, she always mentions that, like, he cuts corners with his research. She's actually like, I don't know how he even managed to clone Martine. She's like, there's no way he would have done it without screwing it up because she has that little confidence in his capabilities. But yeah, so she meets Martine, and later on Martine actually reaches out to her to ask for advice and everything, and Evelyn feels very uncomfortable at this because, you know, first of all, there's this person that looks exactly like you sitting across from you who is not your twin, who you know was cloned from you without your consent, using technology stolen from you by somebody that was supposed to be a person that you could trust. And Evelyn has a lot of trust issues because of her past and everything. So seeing Martine is like a slap in the face every time, and I mean, it's like that for any woman that has been cheated on, I think. Like, if you see the person that your boyfriend or husband is currently with, like, it will be the same even if if Martine wasn't actually Evelyn's clone. But it's just weird knowing that they share the same DNA. And it's very disturbing that this man thinks that he is entitled to his wife's treating him as if he is the center of her universe, which he isn't, because, you know, her career is the center of her universe. He obviously likes the way Evelyn looks. He likes her overall. I think he likes that she is smart. It's just that he doesn't like the pricklier, more negative aspects of her, and he's decided to edit those out or just turn the dial down on them a little bit. Martine isn't able to make her own decisions sometimes. Like, she has to basically look to Nathan for advice. It's just so creepy. The patriarchy on full display. You know, as Evelyn gets to know Martine, she discovers that even though Martine is her clone, she is actually very different from Evelyn, and not just because Nathan edited out her more overbearing traits. And it also makes her think about clones in general and how they're treated as like disposable objects, as if they're like mannequins or something. But in reality, when you clone a person to be that lifelike and that close to the original, aren't they then their own person? There's a lot of ethical issues in here. Like, why isn't the life of a clone valued like a human life? One of the things that surprised me about this book is that it is super character driven, which I did not expect. I really thought it was just going to be a third person, super fast paced thriller, but most of it is actually just Evelyn thinking about her life with Nathan and her father and her mother and what that all means. And did she really even know Nathan? Because like I said, Nathan revolved around her for most of their relationship. Does she really know who he was or what he wanted, or did she only know what he presented to her, what he presented himself as to her. I think one of the reasons I like this book so much is because I hardcore related to Evelyn. And I'm not saying I spend all day in my lab without and hanging out with anybody, and therefore I have no friends or family to reach out to if I need anybody. Like, nothing like that. It's more like when it comes to Evelyn's thinking about her career and like the sacrifices that she's willing to make, like not having a family, her lack of interest in having children at all. I really understood that, and I felt for her when she was wrestling with the fact that her husband had chosen this other woman over her because this woman can give him what he wants, and Evelyn just refused to do that. And as a stubborn woman who also values her freedom and has been told by multiple people throughout her life to, you know, tone it down a little, like, I felt like I got her. She's still an unlikable person though. I do agree with people saying that she's just not a likable protagonist. Is it a bit worrying that I relate so hard to an unlikable protagonist? I think we're just not used to seeing female characters with these personality traits. Like, I thought several times, if Evelyn were a man, it would be very normal for her to have these traits in like a sci-fi novel especially. But I guess female protagonists are usually more likable. Hang on, let me consult the post-it note before I end to see if I forgot anything. Oh yeah, another thing I liked is that they spent a lot of time working in the lab and explaining how the science behind the cloning worked and like how a clone gets created. I really wondered if Sarah Gailey like actually worked in the lab, because it feels like she has spent all that time just sitting there late nights taking notes. It shows all the boring parts of working in a lab too. It's not just all excitement. I saw a review that mentioned that it was very boring having to sit through that, and then another review said they hand wave too much in the science. I don't know, what do you people I thought it was a good balance, personally. Anyways, there's so much more I want to say, but I cannot say it because I feel like that would take away from the experience of reading the book, because it is still a thriller. There are still suspenseful aspects to it that if I like talked about it now, like you would basically, it would ruin the story for you. So you have to read it on your own to figure it out. As is always the case, if a bunch of people are giving their opinions, I have to give my own too. So that this is me contributing to the conversation about The Echo Wife and just telling everyone about how much I loved it and why I loved it so much. Anyways, thanks for watching. I will see you next review. Bye.